Today's webinar is about a piece of software called cite2write, which has been developed here at Queen's University. And the great thing about this particular tool is that it's open source and freely available for staff and students to use. What we're going to do today is to have a look at what is cite2write and identify the benefits for both staff and students. And then I'm going to demonstrate some of the key features of the software. And let's begin. What is cite2write? I'm just going to open up the screen and take you there. I have the address up here at the top, so if you want to take it down or take a note of it, it's quite a simple URL, qub.ac.uk/cite2write. It's a fabulous tool, and the benefits for the staff are obviously that we can assist our students in developing the proper citation and referencing skills that they need to acquire, whether they're in the HND courses, moving on to foundation degrees, and then on to university. Karen was talking previously in her session about Turnitin, and the fact that the Turnitin software is aimed at supporting students and helping them identify where they fall down in plagiarism issues. And this tool is specifically designed to help people create their own referencing tools, but also to help them develop the skills in terms of citation, referencing, and bibliographies. So I think the best thing to do really is to enter the site and to have a look at the resources that are there. Now, some universities and colleges will use different forms of referencing. However, in the colleges, every college specifically, our most common one would be Harvard referencing, and that is the one that we're going to focus on today. Although each of the different referencing tools go through the same skills and ideas and concepts in terms of putting together citations and references. There's a little audio at the top here, and this is really good because it's given the students an oral explanation as to why referencing is important, and it guides the students very nicely through each of the elements of referencing and citation. So if we look initially at the introduction, it sets out the concept of why we reference, what is the importance of referencing, and it also then incorporates a little bit about insights in text citations throughout your work. Now, this is a core skill that many of our students are lacking, and it's where they fall down in the idea of paraphrasing and taking other people's ideas and presenting it as their own, and believing that if they change a few words here and there, that they're actually changing the context of what's written. And it's about getting that information across to them, that the concept is still the same and the idea still belongs to someone else, and as such it needs to be sourced and referenced as such. So it explains why referencing is important, and it's a nice, simple, clear explanation for students. The idea here that it highlights that it adds authenticity to your argument, it backs up your point. And I'm sure as lecturers you're constantly telling your students about using PEE. What is your point? What is your evidence? And what is your explanation to that? And using the referencing effectively will help with that evidence and the explanation together. It also helps the students identify that they have read widely. One of the questions that I would be asked regularly is, what is the difference between a bibliography and a reference? And that's actually dealt with in here as well. So what we're saying to students, if you've read widely, put it in your bibliography, but if you've actually used it in the core element of your documentation, then that should be incorporated in your referencing. So this is a little task for the students to give them an idea of where their knowledge base actually lies. So they have a little drag and drop activity. You include information that is common knowledge. So for example, the world is round. Everyone knows that. it was maybe created, the idea and concept was created by someone else, but because it's common knowledge, then it doesn't have to form part of the referencing tool. And we can take it through each section, and I'll just go through each bit and give you an opinion, and yes. Okay, and each step of the way it will tell you whether or not you're right or wrong, and it will then direct you as to why you should be looking at referencing and the importance of it. The next element then is what is plagiarism. As Karen very correctly said, most students are plagiarizing not because they want to, but because they sometimes don't have the skills that equip them with the ability to produce material in their own way. So there are techniques that can be developed, and this software is designed to help them along that path to developing those particular skills. So if we move on to how to avoid plagiarism, we have here a little self-evaluation, and this allows the students to look at each of the different elements. Do I understand what plagiarism is? Do I understand what in-text references are? And do I know which reference system I should be using? And at that point I'm also going to say many of the colleges align their referencing to a particular university, especially if they have foundation degrees. And I would always stipulate that it's important that you look at the styles that are adopted within each of those universities, just to make sure that the slight nuances of a comma or a full stop are the same across the board. Because students do get very frustrated if they produce their material and they have referenced it what they consider to be correctly, and they get marked down on their style, because they're what we would call the golden marks, that if they do properly they can get 100% in it. So it is very important to them, and it actually has a lot of meaning for them when they get that feedback. So this little evaluation will allow you to assess where their particular skills are. And that's really good. It can form part of your induction program, where students can actually sit and work through this particular piece of software themselves. And you can see there, it'll give you a little analysis at the end. The next bit then is a quiz. This one is a true and false quiz. The nice thing about this particular software is that it uses different types of quizzes as it goes along. So one will be a drag and drop, the next one will be a true and false. And as you can see here, it has been developed using Adobe Captivate. So you've got your audio going alongside the text as well, which really helps with our auditory learners. Okay, we're not actually going to complete this particular test, but we're going to move on then to have a look at the Harvard referencing itself. Okay. Now, you'll not be able to hear the audio on this. Basically what is being described here is what Harvard referencing is, and that it's an author date system for recording materials that have been used within an assignment. And as you can see here, they have given a little rollover which helps you clarify definitions. So if I roll over it, you'll see that there's two elements to Harvard referencing. One is the citation within the text of the assignment, and the other one is the listing references at the end of the assignment. So those two core components come together to produce the Harvard referencing system. The next bit is the in-text citations, and as you can see here, they give very active examples as to how the citations should be made. And in the Adobe Captivate, you can actually see here, as they're talking through, they're highlighting the key issues, and they're talking about simple things like the commas, the dates, and the page number coming after the date. And it shows you core examples. So you've got double names, you've got a single Neville, and then you've got here at the bottom a Neville 2007. So it really is clear explanations as you're going through. So phrasing. I'm just going to move this on a little bit, so I'm just going to turn the audio off. So at the start of if you're trying to create a citation at the start of a sentence, it gives you an example of how that should be done. If you want to do it in the middle, it gives you an example. I'm sorry, I'm just going to take that back again. And then at the end, the final example. So again, what you're doing is building up your students' skills in their ability to actually construct different types of sentences to help the flow of their assignment as they're going through. There are a number of core issues in terms of referencing. So if you have up to 3 authors, that you know that you list all 3. Any more than 3 authors, that you know that you use et al. And that's just a standard that some students may not necessarily know. So if we take this, so I'm just going to move this on a little bit. Okay, so if I just pause that, it'll show you again that Murphy et al. 2008, which means that there are more than one, there are more than 3 authors in this particular citation. Now it's important that the students realise that at the reference phase that all of those names must be included in the referencing. Okay, so I don't need to go through each one of these individually as they are self-explanatory. What I would say is that some of the more difficult things that students may be looking at is if they're finding a citation that doesn't have an author's name. For example, if it's on a website, there's a lovely example of how that should be done. And if I move this through, it talks you through the whole process of where the links and URLs come from, and it gives you a demonstration at the end as to how that should be done in terms of the citation. Another issue that students often have would be secondary referencing. When a reference is made and they have found it in a book and the original source is cited in that particular book. And sometimes that's very difficult for students to really get their head around. And I have to say that the explanation of that is really quite clear and helps quite considerably. And it also then, within the questions and activities at the end, reinforces that particular skill and helps students develop that technique for using in their assignments. It has a final activity, and I'm just going to mute this in a second. This is really quite nice. It's giving you a reference list below, and you're being asked to put in the different dates, etc. And it will let you check to see if things are right or wrong. Again, that's a really good piece of software that just helps you define and refine what you should be putting in there. For example, as you can see in this section here, that you should be looking at your commas, or if you should be having a full stop or a comma, and all of these little differences make the difference between full marks in referencing and maybe losing 2 or 3 inappropriate referencing. So this is actually quite a good activity for students to do. The next thing then is the reference list. Okay, so we've gone through the citation. We know how it should be formed in the actual body of the assignment, and now we're looking at the difference between the reference list and the bibliography. And it will let you look at things such as books. And so it's telling you here that you need your author, date of publication, title in italics, edition, and place of publication. Now this is where the resource actually becomes really very useful, because if we go here down to the lower section, I'll just highlight it for you here, down to the reference generator, it will actually generate the books for you. So we're just going to go down there, right? Okay, so you've got different options. You can either reference a book, an electronic book, chapter from a book, journal, e-journal, website, newspaper, or report. And in this case, we are going to do a book. And as you can see, when I click inside the book section, you will see the surname, the initials. It tells you to use the punctuation, and it demonstrates what the punctuation should be in this particular case. So I'm just going to add in this book, and the author is Todd, comma, Liz, and then my year of publication, 2003. The title of the book is Partnerships for Inclusive Learning, and it is a second edition. And you can see there it's saying that if it is a first edition, it doesn't need a name. It's only after the second edition that you add in the editions. Then we have London, and our name of publisher is British. Okay, and what we want to do then is click on Generate Reference, and when I scroll down, you can see that I've created the reference here. Okay, now if you don't do it correctly, as you can see with the head with the capital letters, then it won't be completely right. So it's important that the students listen and follow the guidelines that are given in the yellow boxes above. And the reason for that is, although you can actually delete a reference that you have, you can create a sorted list which will put it into alphabetical order for you, and then the next thing that you can do is you can download that particular resource onto a Word document, and it forms part of your final assignment, so students aren't copying and pasting or worrying about orders. Everything is done very simply for you. So what you are saying to them is that the tool is here to help you generate resources and help you generate your list, but the onus and responsibility is still very much on you to make sure that you follow the protocol and the standard for each element. So as I say, you can do the same then for your website. Things that students should be looking for is the year the website was last updated, and where it's available at, and the date that it was accessed. This is really important if a student is doing an assignment over a year and they have maybe accessed something in the first month of their assignment and it is no longer available at the URL. At least then the tutor can know when it was last accessed and used. So overall, a really good resource. The last thing that I'm going to show you with this one is the glossary, and I actually quite like this because it really sums everything up really well. And what you have to do is to look at each particular term and identify the definition that goes with it. So if you want a URL and you want that as a H, and it will draw a line to it, and you can change that as many times as you want, and then you can submit, and it will tell you how well you've done. Again, using the reinforcement technique to make sure that the students are really equipping themselves with the skill to reference and cite appropriately. So that's the tool.